What does one say to an ancient Nephilim ghost?
I suppose you start with...
You want to be a farmer? Here's a couple of acres.
Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on YouTube? It's Filthy and we're back with another video. Diablo 4 open beta. We've tried out the Druid. So is the Druid trash? Is the Druid OP? We're going to talk about our playthrough up to level 25, talk about where I think this character shines, talk about some of its issues, and yeah, just have a little bit of a general discussion. Obviously, it's the morning after the new beta, so I haven't played with every single skill and tested everything. We don't have fully decked out supporting legendaries, but this is on a playthrough up to 25. One of my thoughts. We'll talk about solo, we'll talk about group, talk about a few different things. As always though guys, before we do get going, thumbs up brightens my day, subscribe if you're interested in D4. We're going to try and grab as much footage as we can and make some videos, mostly on D4 before the release, but we will be doing a few bits of Diablo 3 and whatnot. Right, the Druid. Overall experience, I think it's probably been the hardest class to play through solo. I have managed to get Melnock unlocked, which is the ice stronghold in the middle of the map. I did that solo. It was not easy. It involved a lot of like using the mechanics the Druid has to avoid damage and stuff. It was definitely harder than Sorcerer, definitely harder than Rogue, harder than Barb. So it's definitely the hardest so far. But there are some good points to the Druid. I think it is potentially quite a good class for like a support build or a hybrid build. But yeah, we'll go through it. So I suppose if we start looking at the skills, because that's realistically probably the most important thing that everybody's going to have. So starting off with the basic that I ended up settling on was Storm Strike. It doesn't really do much damage. None of these basics do much damage in the game, so you're really kind of looking at what utility does it provide. And this basically gives a 15% chance to immobilize an enemy, so lock it in place for 2.5 seconds. Not amazing, but also built in is a 25% damage reduction for 3 seconds. That's really handy. It is a little bit of a squishy class. There are plenty of things you can do for toughness, but getting a 25% damage reduction whenever you use your basic attack seems like a bit of a no-brainer. Like none of these others seem to do much in comparison on a solo basis. We also have a 50% chance to make something vulnerable. Vulnerable enemies take 20% more damage, so ideally you're activating the vulnerable and then you're coming in with your big move to do the damage. Maul, which is you transform into a Werebear to do it, does have some interesting utility because you can fortify yourself with it, make yourself a little bit tankier. But the main one really is you got a 10% knockdown for 1.5 seconds. So every 10th whack with this, you're knocking something down for like 1.5 seconds. I found it to be very slow using the Maul, very slow attack speed. I couldn't really generate enough spirit with it, so I did go back onto this. Initially we used Claw. Claw shapeshifts you into a werewolf. It's so cool, the shapeshifting, you know, going from werewolf to bear. It's very seamless. It's like the Barb with the arsenal system, like the Rogue with the weapon swaps. Lovely. I mean, if I could pick just on visuals, I would be running Claw all day long. I don't think it's that great though. You get a bit of attack speed on this node here, and then you get some poison damage. It's really quite de minimis. 10% chance to attack twice is not particularly good either, so I kept this on as long as I could because it does look the best in my opinion, but I ended up going for Storm Strike just for the damage reduction. Now, one of the really good points about the Druid is the Pulverize skill. So you morph into the Werebear, it's a shape-shifting ability, and you do a really big AoE slam. It hits like an absolute truck. Your next Pulverize basically has got overpower every 10 seconds whilst you remain healthy, so that is above 80% life. So if you're above 80% life, you can get the overpower effect, and it also does 20% reduced damage for enemies, so it keeps you alive a little bit when you hit with this, but it does a really big slap when you've got full health. I've powered this up max, and it's got a great AoE, and it's lovely for blowing apart, you know, big groups of mobs. We've also picked, the damage reduction one we've done. So overpower, I've stacked a little bit of overpower damage, so when it does go off, you do get a really big slam, as I say. I played with Landslide for a little bit to try and get some single target damage. Again, I've just decided to stack everything into Pulverize because it's fun. I like being the Werebear and that sort of thing. Tornado is what max rolls suggest. I haven't played it because I don't really want to be an elemental druid. I want to be a bear. I want to be a werewolf. That's kind of how I want to play it. So we didn't really test with this. I think with enough skill points, you could probably max out your Pulverize, and you're basically using that to clear trash solo. And then when you get into boss encounters where you're trying to do damage on the move, not really be taking damage by standing in the middle of stuff whacking with Pulverize, you might want to build Tornado. You might want to max it out and just have it as like another skill on your bar potentially. Again, Lightning Storm, I need to test that. I did come up here and pick a few of these runes here, or the nodes rather. Heart of the Wild, giving a little bit of max spirit. The only reason was to activate these two nodes here. So the main one, Wild Impulses, core skills, which of course the Pulverize is, get extra damage. They cost 15% more spirit, but 30% increased damage. 30%, pretty big deal for damage, so we grab it. Also, so that we can generate more spirit and have more attacks, we've basically gone for the basic, generating 30% extra spirit. So that's kind of like that mechanic. As I say, I did play with all different types of things, but we've lent pretty hard into the Pulverize. Out of the defensive skills, there's quite a lot of interesting ones here. I've used all of them to differing degrees. The Earthen Bulwark is actually really nice. This will give you a barrier that does 45% of your life for 3 seconds. It also activates Unstoppable, so it gets rid of crowd control, which is brilliant. It stops you from being CC'd as well, which is nice. That's obviously the node that you have to take, and then we get the Fortify here with this node. So Fortify, Shield, CC immunity every 16 seconds. That seems like a pretty good ability. For a while I was running with Debilitating Roar. This would put you into the Werebear form, and nearby enemies get 50% damage reduction for 4 seconds. I was also running Fortify on this for a while, and I was also running the heal, so 4% heal every second, so the 4-second duration, 16% heal. Now for solo, which of these two is better? I personally think it's going to be the Bulwark. I mean, there's nothing to stop you doing both. You absolutely can do. But the Bulwark with the CC removal, I think, is just going to be superior. In a group, however, the Debilitating Roar just reduces enemy damage. So whereas this one gives you a shield, the Debilitating Roar is going to protect the entire group. So already that is pretty nice crowd, damage mitigation move for your group. Cyclone Armor, again, reduces non-physical damage 20%. So obviously if you're getting hit by physical stuff, it's not going to do much. I did unlock the every 10 seconds it intensifies, granting 30% damage reduction for 2 seconds. In the end, I ended up taking it off. I've still got it from an item contribution. But a very interesting defensive skills, Blood Howl. I've had this on pretty much since I unlocked it. It's basically an extra potion. So every 15 seconds you can pop this. It's 20% of your max life. Interestingly, you can reduce the cooldown with a kill. So it's on 15-second cooldown. If you're killing a load of trash, you can get it back very fast, and that way you're not having to rely on your potion spam, and it does top your health up pretty nicely. You can also go for generating spirit, so it becomes like a little teeny tiny spirit potion as well. I'm not sure whether this is worth it. 20 spirit's not a huge deal. So again, maybe there's a point to be saved there with that one. Looking at non-physical res, you could buff that up. You can do 5% damage reduction after popping any of these abilities. Again, I've kind of left those off. Companions were actually really disappointing. I think it might well be the case, and I have seen some supporting companion items from a clanmate who's playing with a couple on, but ultimately the wolves just seem to do almost no damage at all. So whilst they would aggro for you, they're not really helping you out with damage. It was, we were just basically pulverizing everything, and the wolves weren't really helping. Raven looks pretty terrible. The damage is awful. And again, the Vine Creeper doesn't really fill me with a tremendous amount, because 134 damage over 6 seconds. I'm not really feeling it. So I think all of these abilities are a little bit undercooked. Now, it may well be possible that you can create like a Beastmaster, get some items that buff this stuff up, lean into this node here, giving you like up to 30% extra damage when you get it maxed up. You know, the wolf pack, again, there's a little bit of fortify that you can get with it. Increase their damage against slowed, stunned, or poisoned enemies. So again, if you're trying to go for that, you know, maybe you could activate the poison with the fierce claw, perhaps, or something like that. But in the end, I've just decided the companions all seemed a bit crap, so I got rid of all of them, and I probably can't see myself going back to them. Maybe if we find some supporting items before the end of the beta, we'll come back and do a little bit of testing. Moving on to Wrath skills, again, quite a few interesting options in here. I played with a whole bunch of them. Rabies, I think I really like the sound of this. You do a single target attack, it gives a decent amount of poison damage, and then that spreads to surrounding targets. You can make it so that the longer the poison goes on, the more damage it does. At max duration, you get 30% bonus damage. You can have it spreading twice as fast. You can have it doing its damage in like 4 seconds rather than 6 seconds of poison. But again, I found that actually once I'd activated it, I was generally hitting a few times with my generator, getting enough spirit to do a pulverize, and that was just mopping the floor with stuff. And I did put a few points into this, so I had ranked it up, and I had a couple of item contributions as well. So overall, I like the concept of this, but it just ended up, again, compared to the pulverize, very weak. We've got Trample, which is the ability move for the Druid. It is terrible. It's got some interesting things to it. You're unstoppable, so you kind of like CC immune when you do it. It's got a knockback on it, which is like okay, it does a little bit of damage. But compared to like the ability for the Sorcerer, for example, to teleport, the Barb's Leap, I think it's pretty pants as a move speed. Very clunky, goes in a straight line. Sometimes it'll just kind of almost like deactivate after a few yards. It just doesn't feel particularly good to play. I've got it basically from items. I've despecced it completely, but I did have it on for a little bit. But again, not the best. The Boulder is nice. You get a really big knockback. Again, that would be much more of a feature, I think, potentially for a support Druid, because generally speaking, you don't want to knock stuff back. You want it in close and in range of your pulverize. You know, maybe you want to knock stuff back if you're playing Tornado, because you can knock it out your way and then Tornado it. Hurricane, I haven't really tried this, so I can't really say too much about that. Moving down to the ultimate, I've only recently just unlocked this. Grizzly Rage is what we've gone for, going for the bear. Interestingly, when you pop this, you do turn completely into a bear. It changes your skills. So a little bit like Archon does on Diablo 3. You get all this bear skills. So you basically start doing your default with the Maul skill. You get access to Pulverize. You get access to Trample. And then the other one is the bear defensive skill. You actually get the Debilitating Roar as well. Whether that's the best ultimate, who knows? I'm going to play around with Lacerate. This sounds really cool. Like damage up to 10 enemies with a pretty big damage number, 1,400 on there. So I think that could be fun. I did actually go for the node of Unstoppable when we've got Grizzly Rage. So we're, you know, CC immune basically, which is kind of cool. Like, it makes sense, doesn't it? You pop your ultimate, you're CC immune. I didn't bother going for the last one as of yet, because I'm not sure the Fortify is worth it. But given you lose access to all of your other skills when you're in a bear, it could be. So we'll put it on. I'm going to play with it for a bit, and then we'll go back and do Lacerate at some point. Again, Cataclysm, you know, elemental ultimate skill. Might try that. I might make an elemental druid and Petrify. Sounds interesting. You encase all enemies in stone, deal extra crit strike damage to them, and you get a lot of extra crit strike damage against bosses for 6 seconds. Again, there's plenty of other things to do, but that's kind of how I've set up the skills. Looking at the gear pieces, we've been fortunate. I've had access to a decent amount of legendaries, granting barriers, extra damage for barriers. When we have Fortify, we gain extra earth skills. I don't think which one we've got for earth. Earth is, where is it? Core, defense, wrath, ultimate. Right, okay, so it must just be stuff tagged. So I get an extra 2 ranks on bulwarks. There you go, in the tags, next to defensive, next to nature magic. So that is kind of a handy item to have picked up. I've had this decent weapon with life on kill and overpower socketed into it. Yeah, shape shifting, we gain life, we gain fortify. So basically, even with a maxed out druid at 25, some supporting items, albeit nothing like specifically buffing any skill. I've still found it quite hard to play through, simply because it's a melee build, doing the bear and the werewolf, and you're just forced to stand in stuff. You're forced to be, you know, poisoned, frozen, stunned. So overall, on a solo playthrough, I do think it was pretty underwhelming. It was a lot of fun being the bear, a lot of fun being the werewolf, but I think like I'd like a little bit more. I'd like one of these nodes does move speed when you're in werewolf form. I'd like that to be mega buffed. I kind of want to run around as a werewolf really fast and slash a load of stuff. That's kind of what I want to do. In groups, I think it's going to be a very strong class, because we were playing earlier in a group. There's like 3 of us, 2 of us were druids. One of the druids was basically buffing up my toughness, and I was just slapping away with the pulverize, blowing up big groups of enemies and stuff like that. Overall, it's fun to play. I mean, if you're saying on the basis of what I've seen so far, I'd say this is probably the weakest class. I haven't done Necro as of yet because I wanted to do Druid because I hadn't tried it yet. But unless there are some really clutch supporting items later on in the game, I think unless you want to group and play support, at the moment I probably wouldn't really consider this for the launch of the game. I'd be thinking, well, a sorcerer's probably a lot more stronger from a solo casual kind of perspective. If you are going to group though, I think the class does become much better. So we're going to have to see how it is. So a little bit of a mixed bag. Poor mobility skill, pulverize I really like, and the rest of it is just kind of keeping yourself alive. I really want to be a werewolf. That's like the build that I absolutely 100% want to do in the game. So fingers crossed we find a way to do it. They're my thoughts and experiences on the druid. As I say, it's early. I haven't tested all the skills. Let me know what your experience is. Maybe there's some things that I could do with testing out, some stuff that might help improve the character or a playthrough. But I mean, we've got everything done with it, you know, so there's nothing, it's not like it can't be done. But bear in mind, we do have the extra skill points from the renown. We've had some decent luck with legendaries. We've crafted a few legendaries. We've had access to gems and stuff. For it to be the hardest playthrough, I think means that it's potentially a little bit of a difficult class. But again, maybe in the end game, maybe as we get further to like level 50, find some stuff, maybe it really shines there. But at the moment, from a 0 to 25 perspective, definitely the hardest so far. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I've been the Filthy Casual. I'm going to go test the Necro, and I'll be back with some more videos as soon as I can. Take it easy, guys. Peace.